The Rangers signed lefty reliever Will Smith in what will probably be their final signing before the season. They also DFA'd Mark Mathias. Why it makes me happy and also bothers me at the same time, both of these moves. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a criminally addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment almost any single thing below. Now, the big news of this weekend, there was some big news yesterday about Leody Taveras, who is hurt, who has, of course, an oblique strain. A low level will be sat out for 7 to 10 days. I talked extensively about that in yesterday's episodes. If you haven't done that, go check that out. Also talked a little about Cole Ragans, which I'll talk more about on this show, and briefly touched on Will Smith. I didn't get into it too much because there was a lot to talk about with the center field situation, but the Rangers have Will Smith on their roster. No, not the one that slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. No, not the one who has won a few at least one Silver Slugger at catcher for the Dodgers in the NL. Now, this is a left-handed reliever who has won the last 2 World Series with the Braves and the Houston Astros. He is a very, very valuable member of the pen, a one-time All-Star who is coming off a mixed bag of a season. Wasn't super great in Atlanta, but got much better once he went to Houston for his career. He has been a bit of a lefty specialist with some moderately extreme, not quite as extreme a splits as I thought, not as much as I said yesterday, but a 640 OPS for his career against lefty hitters and 734 against righty hitters. So about a 94 OPS point difference between lefties and righties. It's been a little tougher for him to be a lefty specialist, and for really anybody to be a lefty specialist now with these new rules the last couple of years about batters or pitchers having to face 3 hitters before being able to get out of an inning, and for a pitching change, you can't just bring in one lefty to face one lefty and then make another pitching change. You have to face more guys, and he's still managed to be fairly effective over the last few years. He has been fairly effective with Atlanta in 2021. He pitched in 60, he finished out 60 games, had 37 saves. So for the most part, he has been a closer. The last year, he was not a closer. He lost his closer's role in Atlanta. Also had 34 saves when he was an all-star with the San Francisco Giants in 2019. 65 innings there, 95 strikeouts. So a big strikeout guy the last couple of years. And for his career, a 10.8 Ks per 9 for his career. He's got some really good swing and miss stuff, and is able to get guys to swing out of the zone very effectively. His chase rate of getting guys to swing at pitches outside of the zone was in the 97th percentile last year, and his swing and miss rate against his pitches was in the 84th percentile. Also doesn't give up a lot of hard contact, doesn't give up a lot of hits. Did get a little bit more walk happy last year. Didn't have the strongest fastball, 92 miles an hour, but he is a primary slider pitcher. Got one of the nastier lefty sliders in the league. Also has a curveball he throws occasionally, and a changeup that is sometimes there, which I think he has developed to throw against those righties now that he is having to face them a little bit more often. But he's a guy whose stuff is solid. One of the better lefties left on the market. I don't really get why Matt Moore wasn't a consideration here. My only thought is that he is not so much a lefty specialist, and the Rangers kind of have 2 guys who will be doing what he has been doing last year, or what he did last year, I should say, for the Rangers. What their bullpen looks like now, I feel like it's pretty solid. Maybe 1 or 2 spots are up in the air, and depending on health, maybe that might be 2. It's literally like 1 or 2 spots that I think are up in the air. But right now I'm thinking the bullpen looks like this, with Jose Leclerc, Jonathan Hernandez as your 2 high leverage righties, Brock Burke and Taylor Hearn as your 2 high leverage lefties. Will Smith will be the lefty specialist, come in whatever situation, just face a couple of batters if they're lefties. Then I think the last 2 spots will probably be Glenn Otto and Jake Odorizzi as the kind of, random situation pop in and deal with guys as necessary. Glenn Otto they might still be thinking of as a starter. I've kind of let that ship sail, but maybe they're still thinking that. And Jake Odorizzi, I think, would be more likely to take over some starts as the kind of sixth starter in the rotation. So he's kind of the long man in this pen. But I think it's pretty much set. I feel really, really good about that bullpen. I know there was a lot of questions about what this bullpen was last year, and it was very, very frustrating, and it just was not quite what the Rangers needed to be. But the starting pitching will make all the difference in the world, I think, on this bullpen and what they're asked to do, the amount of times they're asked to go out and throw, the guys that they are asked to put in those high leverage situations. I think they will be allowed to be fresher, not have to throw them as often and as long of outings as they were having to do last year. I think that's going to make a huge, huge world of difference. But the other part of this transaction was designating Mark Mathias for assignment. Mathias was a kind of utility infielder / played a little bit of outfield. He was acquired in the Matt Bush trade. And there was a little bit of a thought that like maybe this was the primary guy in that trade because the other guy in that trade, Antoine Kelly, his stuff is kind of wild. And the Rangers left him unprotected on their 40-man last year after acquiring him. Had, I think, one or two, not very many outings in Frisco, but the ones they did have were really, really rough. Could not stay in the strike zone and was really, really struggling. But Mathias absolutely crushed it at the big league level last year with the Rangers, a little more so than Milwaukee. It wasn't his first major league action, but it was the most that he had seen. In 24 games with Texas, he had a .919 OPS. That was in 75 plate appearances, had 3 doubles, 5 home runs, pair of stolen bases, 9 walks, 26 strikeouts, a .365 on base, and slugged .554. He played first base, second base, left field, and right field for the Rangers. I think he could play a little bit of third. Probably won't be, well, I don't know if he'll make it through waivers. I'm assuming that somebody will find a spot for him on their roster, but I didn't see Mathias being the one to get this cut. He is basically what the Rangers have in Brad Miller is just kind of like a slightly worse version, left-handed version of Mark Mathias. Now, Mathias doesn't have big league experience playing shortstop, but Brad Miller hasn't done that in a very, very long time. I also would trust Mark Mathias' glove at third base over Brad Miller's. And, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of money owed to Brad Miller at this point, and you want to have the veterans and yada, 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 and you're not sure how much of that was real because it was just 81 plate appearances in the big leagues for Mathias last year. 17 of those came with Milwaukee. Actually, 91 plate appearances, not 81. Anyway, but he was a very, very valuable player for the Rangers last year. A .9 baseball reference WAR in those 81 at-bats last year combined between Milwaukee and Texas. I think all of that, almost all of that at least. Yeah, 0.8 of that .9 WAR that he had last year came in the 24 games that he played with Texas. So he's a guy who could go a bunch of different places, had a lot of versatility, had a big right-handed bat, which the Rangers don't really look like they have much of on their bench. I mean, depending on how often Mitch Garver is playing, maybe he is that, but having a guy who can come in and, be your DH if you really need it. You don't want him to be an everyday DH guy, but having a guy to come in and spell your other guys in the corners. Adolis needs decent amounts of time off because he plays so hard, and we saw that last year of him being a little bit more effective down the stretch with more days off. But having a guy like Mark Mathias on this roster, I thought was something that made complete sense and kind of caught me off guard. And now I'm not really sure how much I know about what the Rangers are going to do with their opening day roster. We're going to get into a little bit more about these first cuts made at camp and the World Baseball Classic. But first, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire feels like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps people find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, the first round of cuts were made this weekend. Some of the guys who were minor leaguers who were up at big league camp to go and get a little piece of action at the show, get to see what was going on with the big leaguers, hang around with them at camp, and just kind of pal around and learn from them. They are headed back down. Among the first guys who were in this round of cuts this weekend were the Vandy boys. They are in minor league camp now. Cody Bradford as well, Blaine Krim, Justin Foscue, Antoine Kelly, like I talked about, and a few others as well. Foscue is the one that kind of turned my head just a little bit because he was having such a fantastic spring. I think that maybe his fantastic spring, granted, it was 11 plate appearances at the big league level, so it is spring training, all small sample size, but he was very, very impressive. He does not have the defensive versatility of Justin Foscue. I mean, he's basically a left field / maybe second base / probably DH. The bat is a little bit louder, I think, than Justin Foscue, but the bat was very, very loud in this spring. In those 11 plate appearances, like I said, he hit 400 with an on-base of 364, which is the rare on-base lower than the batting average, but he does walk at a decent rate normally. Had a pair of home runs, slugged exactly 1,000. That is a 1,364 OPS, which is almost tops, if not for Diosbel Arias, who I have heard literally nothing of, but he has 2 plate appearances, and one of those is a double, and so we're not going to count that because that's too small of a small sample size for our many small sample size qualifier. But yeah, it was nice to see Justin Foscue have a good spring. He's a guy who I have gone back and forth on so many times of how highly I rate him versus how much I think, like, all right, I just don't really see a spot for this guy. I think he's someone who could have a decent amount of value if the Rangers decide to trade him. He's kind of always one of the ones that I put in my trade proposal of like, yeah, I don't really see a spot for this guy on the Rangers, but I think someone else like Miami or a team that just needs somebody who can hit and hit real good, and if they don't play a defensive position, then fine, we'll live with that. Miami is definitely a team like that, and so in all of my hypothetical trades for Miami Marlins starting pitchers before the Rangers signed 18 bajillion this offseason, he was always one of the ones in there. So interesting for him. Nice to see the Vandy boys get a little bit of a look at the big league camp. Leiter said he was a little less starstruck this big league camp, but as opposed to last year when it was like first real professional kind of outings and stuff, because I mean, he got drafted June of the year before and then went back to college and didn't really do much stuff with the Rangers. Just kind of took it easy because he pitched so much his draft year, and then came back and wow, here's spring training, here's all these big leaguers. I mean, I would have thought he would have been more starstruck this year. I know he had like one spring training under his belt, but you have Jacob deGrom and Nate Eovaldi there. Like, you have a few more stars in terms of starting pitchers that you could follow around and learn from. You also have Bruce Bochy, who is a star himself, which is kind of cool. And Bochy talked very highly about both of those Vandy boys and being excited to see them and excited with how they handled themselves in big league spring training. But their time in the big league camp is done. They're headed back down to the minors. We'll see where they start. I did a whole episode on Kumar Rocker and where I thought he should start last week. Pretty good episode. You should check that out as well. But something else is starting today. It is the World Baseball Classic. The Rangers have exactly one player, just one player who is participating. It is just Martin Perez. We are not going to see Jose Leclerc there. He was going to pitch, so is Nate Eovaldi, but on Leclerc, the Rangers said, yeah, not happening. He had some neck tightness, and so that was pretty much it for that. The first game is going to be tonight, Tuesday, at 10 p.m. Central Time between Cuba and the Netherlands. It'll be on FS1. USA first game is not until Saturday. That'll be at 9 p.m. against Great Britain. I'm sure there'll be a lot of memes. I know during any World Cup in America and the British play, Twitter is absolutely fire. I'm sure it will be even more so the case now, especially since, I mean, Great Britain has some decent players, some actual Major League players, but it's Team USA, and they have Mike Trout, and they have the reigning MVP, and they have, I think just the one MVP. I honestly, Aaron Judge I don't think is participating for the Team USA, but Mike Trout is there, and the two Cardinals corner infielders are there, and a few other absolute stars, including the other Will Smith, will be there as well, and that should be a lot of fun. Plus, the Dominican team is playing Venezuela on Saturday. I'm not sure if I don't think that's the Venezuela's first game. It might be. Actually, yes, as to what I'm seeing, that is Venezuela's first game as well. It's going to be against the Dominican. That is going to be a tough matchup there. I think we might get to see Martin Perez pitch in that game. We did see him in what will probably be his last spring training start for the Rangers. Maybe he'll get one more after he comes back from the WBC. Depends on how deep Venezuela goes. But he looked pretty solid in his most recent start for the Rangers that came on Monday. Went 3 innings, allowed 2 runs, one of which was earned, didn't walk anybody, struck out 3, did allow a home run among his 4 hits that he allowed in that game. But pretty solid outing, seemed healthy. Everything was mostly fine. Also got to see a little bit of Antoine Kelly in that game. Got to see a Luis Angel Acuna home run, which was very nice, but not a whole lot else going on there. Corey Seager got a double in, I believe, one of his, 2 hits. Also had a walk. Corey Seager has been really, really fantastic for the Rangers this spring training. He is looking very, very nice, and it was good to just see him look great. Good to see any Rangers players look great, and good to see Martin Perez get out there, throw 3 innings, and not be hurt. That is really nice, because that has not always been the case with the Rangers and their starters this spring training. But one starter who I did want to talk about is Cole Ragans. I talked a little bit about him in yesterday's episode, but Cole Ragans went on Sunday for his first start of spring training with 3 innings, allowed 2 hits, 1 run, which was earned, no walks, big deal for him, especially given last year and how walky he was, and had 4 strikeouts. But again, if you didn't listen to the end of yesterday's episode, the big news on him is that he's throwing hard. He's throwing gas. Cole Ragans is throwing gas like he has never thrown. I always thought there was something a little bit more in there for Ragans because he was 6'4", and so you'd think there'd be a little bit more oomph in there, but he touched all the way up to 99 this spring and touched 97 several times. I mean, he had 18 pitches, 95 miles an hour or more, and 2/3 of his pitches were for strikes. That was something that he struggled with last year, was staying in the strike zone. And when he was coming up, he got a lot of comparisons to Cole Hamels, which again is not fair because Cole Hamels I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but he's a Hall of very good pitcher. He's a 4-time All-Star, 4-time top 8 Cy Young finisher, won a World Series MVP, and also had a no-hitter under his belt. Also had an NLCS MVP. I believe that was the same year, 2008, when the Phillies won the World Series. But the guy was absolute nails in the postseason, was very good for the Rangers for a couple of seasons, and then not so good for the Rangers, and then kind of decent for the Cubs, and then kind of decent, kind of bad for Atlanta in one start in 2020. And he is still, I think, trying to make a comeback. But I think that there is still some version of that picture of Cole Ragans in there. I mean, granted, a lot of it was just like, oh, their name is both Cole. They are both left-handed. They are both 6'4". They are both in the Rangers organization when Ragans was drafted. And so it was like, and they both have, like I said, good changeup and pretty similar repertoire. I was just like, okay, now this is the guy. This is the guy. Let's just go ahead and very much compare you to this guy. But injuries really took a toll on Cole Ragans, seeing him come back. I always thought there was a little bit more velocity in there, like I said, and he did some mechanical changes, added a little bit of weight, worked on his balance and his hip flexibility, and that has done wonders. If Cole Ragans if he can maintain that kind of velocity, because he already has a really, really good spin rate on his fastball, he has a fantastic changeup, probably the best lefty changeup in the system, probably the best lefty changeup, it like including the majors, except for Martin Perez. I think it's not quite that good, but it's really, really good and really effective with his four-seamer that spins just absolutely ridiculously. And I'm sure spins even better now that he has got a few more miles per hour on that as well. But I think that he is really going to factor into the Rangers' rotation plans for the future. Something that I could not have said at the end of last year. I thought maybe before they signed all these pitchers, I was like, if you're penciling in Cole Ragans as like your number 5 or 6 starter at the big league level in 2023, I thought that was going to be a problem. Now I think, well, maybe it's not. Maybe Cole Winn figures it out as well. We'll see what the deal is with him. I still don't have a very good read on him. His couple outings have looked, I think actually maybe just had the one outing. I'm sure he'll be back on the mound pretty soon. His one outing that I have seen looked pretty solid. Did have, I think, a walk, maybe 2, but had a shutout at 3 innings of work that he did. So both those guys I think are going to be the ones that are champing at the bit for that final rotation spot either next year or at the end of this year, or depending on at some point this year, depending on the amount of starting pitcher injuries that the Rangers have. They have some guys who are injury prone, so having that kind of depth, maybe they surpass Dane Dunning as the 7 rotation spot, number 7 starter, and that earns them a few big league starts this year. One of those 2 Coles, I'm leaning more towards Ragans, because his problems were just like being able to attack big league hitters because his stuff just wasn't quite there. The changeup was good, but everything else was kind of like you really need a little bit better of a fastball to get away and be very effective with that kind of repertoire. But it's looking like he has added that velocity. Those changes are looking very good. I hope they're sustainable. I hope he just stays healthy because, again, having 2 Tommy John surgeries before you turn 23 is just an absolute bear for anybody. So that is very, very exciting stuff. But I did want to look a little bit at some other guys who have had a pretty decent start to the spring. We got another healthy start for Andrew Heaney on Monday. 3 innings of shutout ball there, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk, and 2 hits. Also had 3 shutout innings of Glenn Otto. Only 1 strikeout and a pair of walks, but no hits. Looked really, really solid there. Got a home run from Corey Seager, his 2nd of the spring, and he looks fantastic. Some real standout stat leaders. Not that spring training stats matter, but it's kind of fun to see who is crushing it and who is it's just fun to see who's crushing it. Corey Seager right now is absolutely crushing it. Has a pair of home runs and a double, hitting over 400 on base in the 440s, slugging 824, a 1268 OPS. Looks like this guy's ready for opening day. It's looking like he is enjoying the lack of a shift. Granted, there are still some kinds of shifts being imposed. I don't know if you saw the picture of, I forgot who it was that did it to Joey Gallo, but of course it was Joey Gallo. Someone brought their left fielder all the way into the shift second baseman spot in shallow right field. So literally all of left field was wide open for Joey Gallo should he hit it the other way in the outfield. And that just felt especially cruel for Joey because he has always been one of the ones who was affected most by it. I have not seen anyone do that to Corey Seager. I think Seager might be a little bit more effective in plopping something in left field if it's literally the entire left field is open like it was against Gallo. Also seeing some really, really great stuff in the outfield from Adolis Garcia and Robbie Grossman. The thing that I am most excited about for both of these guys, Adolis Garcia with him in spring training last year, same thing I'm looking for this year. Just get that walk rate up. If Adolis Garcia can be patient and stay in the zone, his prodigious power will take over. Pitchers will have to throw him good pitches, and he will absolutely crush them. He has one of each type of extra base hit, a double, triple, and home run, hitting 375 on base, about 100 points higher than that, slugging 750. And Robbie Grossman, who has 0 strikeouts to 6 walks. Adolis Garcia has 3 walks to 3 strikeouts. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But Robbie Grossman hitting over 400 on base of 579, slugging 667. He also has a home run this spring. And I'm really excited about him. Having a guy with that kind of on-base skill is something that I think this Rangers offense needed. That I wasn't super excited about Robbie Grossman. I mean, no offense to Robbie Grossman. I mean, he's a fine big league player. And I'm honestly just happy that it seems like the Rangers left field conundrum, which has been a, revolving door of characters for the last, I don't know, basically it feels like since David Murphy, Josh Hamilton were manning left field, or even maybe Shin-Soo Choo, I think, held it down a little bit more than that. We did have 1 year of Joey Gallo being left fielder, but still, it feels like it's been a real rotating cast of characters, and just having at least one this year. I think there were 14 last year, different players that played left field for the Rangers. I don't think it's going to be 14 this year. I'm hoping for single digits. Like, we can stick it like 9, then I think that'd be great. But I'm excited about Robbie Grossman. I think it's not sexy having a guy who's a left fielder who doesn't hit for a lot of power. He's like, all right, he kind of gets on base and he's like kind of fine out there. But I think that is going to be a big bump. As excited as I was about seeing Ezekiel Duran or Josh Smith or maybe Bubba Thompson get a little bit more reps in left field and seeing them develop, the Rangers are trying to win now. And having a guy like Robbie Grossman may not be sexy, but it is effective and it is important. And I think that is going to end up looking like a really, really good move. Grossman has had a couple of years where he has busted out that power a little bit, and I'm not expecting him to have a career year. When we saw in Oakland, he had a year where he had an OPS over 800. Also had one of those years in Minnesota, had 23 home runs as a career high in 2021 with a 772 on base that year. In 2021 with Detroit, but I don't think he's going to get 156 games. I don't know. He might. It's entirely possible, but I just don't think it's particularly likely. But the Rangers got an upgrade in left field, and that was their biggest hole on the diamond. And so I feel really good about this team heading into the season. And I am honestly really, really excited for some World Baseball Classic. It's going to be a little weird. It's going to be a lot of fun. I kind of wish we could have seen some more players from the big leagues go and star there for their respective countries. But, I'll take some intense baseball in the middle of spring training as the weird little treat that it is, because it's been since 2017 since we had the last one. And good Lord, does baseball look so very different, and the world looks so very different than the way it looked in the last World Baseball Classic, with classic moments like Adam Jones's home run robbing catch and the picture that was basically like a Renaissance painting of all the faces reacting to that. I hope Adam Jones is doing well wherever he is, and I hope you are too. Thank y'all so much for listening to Locked On Rangers, making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go make that Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.